Alrighty, welcome back. Welcome back. I know it's been a little bit of a layoff since we last did an episode. I was at Summer League, which was pretty cool. Was planning to record some episodes while I was there, and that was probably a little bit naive of me. I should have, I guess, pre-recorded some. Didn't end up happening, but that's okay. It works out really well for a number of reasons. One, it was a little bit of a break, which was fine. It doesn't hurt for me to get a break. Two, now it lines up well that our first episode back, we'll have Matt back on, and we're going to be talking about some of the consensus dynasty rankings among a number of different fantasy dynasty analysts. And I think Matt pulled from some other rankings as well. And just take a look at how the overall dynasty analyst community views this rookie class. Now, some of these rankings, mine are included in this, but they're from before Summer League. And I will say that my opinions on some players have definitely changed a little bit since Summer League. Some players I'm a little higher on, some I'm a little lower on. And we will be able to discuss that as well. Another really cool thing, I mentioned this in a tweet yesterday. So if you check that out, or if you saw the tweet and you were wondering what the pretty cool surprise was, I don't remember surprise is the word I used. But I think it's pretty cool that our show is now part of the Believe Network. So yeah, that's a good thing for us. It means you guys were listening to this show and liking this show, which I really appreciate because I just sit here and talk on a mic for a little while, and apparently at least a couple of people enjoy it or maybe hate it so much they can't get enough of it. Either way, I appreciate it. Just means that this show and Dan's network are continuing to grow. So the Old Man Squad Sports Network is continuing to grow. So a bunch of good things all around. Hopefully this means more and more people will continue to check out our shows. I know that now with the NBA season closing in, there should be more people checking out that are looking for more of the redraft content. And of course, we will discuss some redraft stuff. We're going to keep it as dynasty focused as we can for as long as we can. But at some point, we will do a little bit of redraft content, which is also still relevant for dynasty managers. So no worries on that end. Just because if you're in a dynasty league, you still might want to try and win your league this year. So you kind of need to know how players are going to be valued just for this season. So if you're pushing for a championship, that's still relevant to you. If you're rebuilding, now you know how to value these players that you could be looking to trade. So Matt will be joining us. We'll talk about some of these rookie rankings, these consensus rookie rankings, and then also just Summer League thoughts. What happened and should we care? How much should we care? What should we care about? We have a nice article with graphics to reference. The article is written by Owen Phillips, and you can find it at the f5.substack.com. And we'll show that as well when we get to talking about it. But before I bring Matt in, I want to remind you guys that BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your sports betting action. With baseball season in full swing and football season around the corner, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news and scores, and even live in-game betting. From MLB to UFC to tennis and NFL futures, BetOnline remains your choice for sports wagering info. And in between the games, you can head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and a live casino. Head to the website today and take advantage of their industry-leading VIP program with level-up bonuses and weekly cash boosts. As a reminder, I know I mentioned this, I think it was during the last episode we did, there are live odds for Summer League games available. Whether or not you choose to participate in that is entirely up to you, but it just goes to show that this is a year-round sport, one, and two, that BetOnline is there with you every step of the way. I believe they also have some NBA futures available somewhere that if you wanted to get on that action, you could do that as well. Of course, there's also the WNBA games with the All-Star game coming up. So a lot of things you can do on BetOnline. Would definitely recommend checking that out. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, and we have Matt Lawson back here with us. And like I said, we're going to be talking about Summer League and some consensus rookie rankings for your dynasty leagues now that we've got a little bit of data to see how these players performed in an NBA setting. Before we get into that and talking about the specifics of what matters, Matt, how are you, and what are kind of your general takeaways from the, I guess, almost all of Vegas Summer League?
I'm feeling great. I've really enjoyed this summer league run because I think what we've seen from this rookie class is there's a lot more here, a lot more substance than what we saw last year. I think there was a little bit discouraged about it this time last year. There's been some really nice surprises. There's been some guys who we liked who maybe we like a little bit more. Some things that are developing in their games since we last saw them because it's been a minute. A lot of these guys played their last game March, early April, and we just haven't seen very much of them since then. So they've been developing, they've been changing, and that's the great part about this, that these young prospects are always dynamic. They're always changing. There's always stuff that's on the rise that might be regressing. You need to be able to keep track of it because every game is a new opportunity to find something that matters in where their trajectory is headed as a prospect.
For sure. And with the summer league stuff, I know we briefly discussed it. There's been a graphic that circulates around usually around this time of year. It's part of an article from Owen Phillips, which I'm going to go ahead and pull up here on the screen so that we can take a look at it. Not so much so we can read through the article, but just so that we can plug his work a little bit because he did a fantastic job with this and created some, one, a great article, and then two, some great graphics to be able to show what matters for summer league. So here's the first one that's just kind of like a plot chart that shows strength of correlation. But I'm going to show this other graphic that probably lays it out a little bit prettier for us, a little bit easier for us to read, that shows what categories or stats that we see in summer league translate the best to what we end up seeing during rookie seasons. Matt, I know you said that you had been doing a lot of this research on your own the last few days, and then bam, this article publishes an updated version with this graphic here. Can you tell me a little bit about what all this means and how we can apply that to our drafts?
Yeah, so shout out at the top to Owen Phillips, who runs the F5, which is a Substack that everybody who is interested in sports statistics, analytics should follow. I think if you play fantasy, you should follow it because he, throughout the year, gives some really insightful stuff that you don't really find anywhere else from this perspective. And I've loved this article for, I think, 4 years now that he wrote back in 2021 because it took some things that I had seen kind of anecdotally or maybe that I had observed, and it broke it down with real statistical regressions to be able to show the correlation between the performance in summer league of rookie prospects and how they actually performed in the NBA. And 4 years ago, kind of the big conclusion of it is the biggest takeaway, the thing that you should remember from this is that often the style of play that a player has can be seen in the small summer league sample, their shot profile, kind of like the overall kind of player that they are can come through. The role that they might have in the NBA as a rookie can come through in different statistics, but their overall performance, how well they do, a lot of that is just noise. So that deals more with like the efficiency with which they do something. How what their 3-point percentage is has almost no correlation, and we understand that because it takes a while, even in the regular season, to get to a certain number of games for those statistics to start to actually mean something. You need a larger sample for something like shooting percentages to actually matter. Minutes, points scored, all of those things can be a little bit skewed in summer league because their roles are not going to be what their roles are. At least the minute load is not going to be the same once you get into the regular season, and their offensive roles might not always be the same. But the kind of player that they are, and the kind of player that they're going to be in the modern NBA, that you can start to see, and that's what Owen Phillips does a really good job of being able to point out here. So looking at this, the big thing that you take away that you from summer league statistics is that 3-point shooting volume is really heavily correlated from summer league over to the rookie season. So if a guy is shooting a ton of threes in summer league, that probably means he's going to be shooting a ton of threes in the NBA as a rookie. And if he's not really shooting that often, he's probably not going to be doing it as a rookie either. And you see both 3-point attempt rate and 3-point attempt rate and 3-point attempts per 36 heavily correlated across summer league and rookie seasons. Assists per 36, also pretty strong correlation. Now, this is important because we're only dealing with some of these guys with a few games, but you do see this where their role is going to be consistent. Do they have the ball in their hands? Are they distributing to others? Do they have the ability to be able to pass against more athletic defenders to be able to create advantage and create advantage for others? that stuff comes through pretty quickly. That can be really important for fantasy. So it's something we're going to be looking at with this draft class. Blocks per 36, total rebounds per 36, and offensive rebounds per 36, as well as defensive rebounds, which a little lighter correlation. But all of that kind of suggests if you can rebound in summer league, it's probably going to carry over. Some of that is role, some of that is athleticism. Offensive rebounding is often kind of thought of as a better indicator of athleticism and true rebounding talent. Defensive rebounding is more about role. If you're kind of underneath the basket defensively, it's likely that the ball's just going to come into your hands as long as you have some size, some ability to be able to rebound. Offensive rebounding takes true skill because you're usually out of position. You have to be able to have anticipation. You have to be able to have the skill to be able to go get that ball when the defender probably has a better chance for that rebound than you do. So that's something that we look at here because guys who are strong offensive rebounders usually end up being overall strong rebounders in the NBA as a whole.
Yeah, and I think honestly, if you just look at which ones, I think you kind of alluded to this as well, which ones are kind of correlate pretty well and which ones don't, it does make sense from what we want to see, just like from like a narrative standpoint. Like coaches will say, okay, we want to see you shoot threes during summer league because we want you to shoot threes during the regular season. We want to see you with the ball in your hands. We want to see you creating for others. Oh, okay, so that's why your assists, their blocks, the rebounds, those kind of things. And if you go down to the bottom, like all the shooting percentages, like, yeah, okay, sometimes it's a player that is coming over from, like a Noah Essengay just in the middle of his professional season and then immediately comes over. And it's like playing against players that maybe have had a few months off since their college season versus players that are now just competing for any sort of job. And then you also have players that are being handed like, first round pick contracts. Other players are like on non-guaranteed contracts or just on summer league invites, just trying to, provide for their family. So it's like so many different, like interesting narrative things. So different like competition levels or how much some of these games matter to certain players. Coaches may say to, their first round pick, okay, like we want to see you do these things that may put you in uncomfortable positions. And so, yeah, they're not going to shoot the ball as well, but they're also being defended. I think this was one of the examples that I saw was Dennis Jenkins from Detroit when they were playing against the Rockets and Reed Sheppard. And I think Reed Sheppard had like 18 points that game, but it felt like every bucket came when Jenkins either wasn't on him or wasn't on the floor. And then when Jenkins got on there, Reed Sheppard just really struggled to score on him. And it's like, okay, like, yeah, I'd still say Reed Sheppard's a better player and I'd value him higher, but a summer league game to Reed Sheppard means less than a summer league game to Dennis Jenkins, who was on a two-way last year with Detroit. And I think right now, because I checked after that game, still not on a contract. So it's like that game means so much more to him. So, I think that some of the narrative things also play into this and really it all adds up and adds together to make sense to me, at least.
Yeah, and this is really important because I think every year, and I've been tracking this stuff for a long time. What you're going to now see is there's a narrative around how guys perform in summer league, and it's going to drastically change the way people draft them in rookie drafts if your rookie draft is occurring after summer league. In some cases, I think that's usually a complete overreaction, and it often ends up leading people astray, especially if the view of that performance is based on really strong shooting percentages, a bunch of steals, really high point totals. All of those things don't correlate. So just because a guy was hot for a few games at summer league, hit some shots, it doesn't mean anything statistically. So you want it to be based on something that not only with a strong statistical foundation, but it needs to also be something that you can say, I watched this guy before the draft and I watched him at summer league and something has changed and I can point to the thing that has changed. Here's the thing that he now does better that allows his process is better, his skills are better, and therefore the result is going to be different now. If you can say that, if you can point to something that is actually changed, then I'm okay with you changing your evaluation based on summer league, but it needs to be based on that other than that boy nice, he had a really nice summer league. That's not going to work, but that's a lot of what people are going to do when it comes to now the vibes that they have around some of these prospects, the way that they view them. And every year that falls apart. You have guys who really struggle, like a Franz Wagner in summer league. Terrible. Didn't work in the context. He just didn't look aggressive at all. Came into his rookie season and immediately flipped that narrative. And then you have guys who are sometimes great in this context, and then it doesn't carry over into the season at all. Jalen Johnson was awesome in summer league, and maybe you could say, "Oh, that was a sign of things to come." It was already based on what we had seen from him at Duke in the limited games that he had there, and then he didn't get to play at all in his rookie season. People kind of forgot about him, but your opinion of him shouldn't have changed from either of those things. The strong summer league performance was already what we knew him to be, and the not playing as a rookie had nothing to do with who he could be going forward. So we're trying to help you cut through the signal and noise on this. I've got a lot of thoughts, and I'd love to be able to get into some of them on some of these prospects and what we saw from them across these different summer league settings.
Yeah, shout out to Nate McMillan for making us have to wait a little bit on Jalen Johnson. But just based on this, I would say that off the top of my head, we shouldn't be overreacting and drafting Jamir Watkins in the top 15 just because he had an 8-steal game. And we probably can feel a little bit better about Egor Demin, about the fact that the amount of threes that he shot. And I believe in this article, which I'm going to scroll down to it, it references it. I don't remember if it's a graphic. It is a graphic, but well, kind of. But talking about, some of the leaders of 3-point attempt rate here. I think there's another list here as well, but where Egor Demin is atop a list of a lot of guys. So like this is a group of players that these numbers should translate a little like pretty well, I would say. And then I think there might be, this is also some stats that translate fairly well, showing them in order of when they were drafted. So this isn't an order of production value, but it shows a guy like Colin Murray-Boyles. I think he's highlighted in this article as well, with an awesome offensive rebounds per 36 rate, as well as the assists and blocks are pretty solid. And then Cooper Flagg, it wasn't quite as productive. I think he mentions that in this article. So maybe tempering the expectations a little bit, which is fair, but it's also a 2-game sample size. And the context of the team is going to be pretty different from how it will look during the regular season, because he's not going to be sharing the floor with pretty much anyone that he was playing with this summer. He's going to be playing with Anthony Davis and Klay Thompson and a lot of other really talented players. And then some of the ones that we can't trust as well, some of the per 36 stats that are shown here that maybe, we don't value some of these numbers quite as high as we would some of the ones that we just talked about.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me coming out with some, from looking at these statistics and just kind of the eye test of, the California Classic, Salt Lake City, Vegas Summer League. I think with each prospect, what I like to be able to do is go through and be like, what carried over from what I already knew about them, and what was a little bit different than what I expected. And Egor Demin is a really, really great example of, wow, that was not exactly what I expected. And it wasn't necessarily, he had a high volume of threes at BYU, and it wasn't necessarily that they went in. It was the kind of threes that he was taking. And the way that he was being used by the Nets. And it almost felt like they were attempting to be able to say, we know that you can have the ball in your hands. We know that you can process the floor, distribute the ball. We're going to take you out of that, and we want you to be able to play kind of like a wing 3-point shooting, volume 3-point shooting role. And I don't think that's what they're going to do necessarily with him in the regular season. But I think there was an attempt here to be able to say, we have seen the growth that you've had as a 3-point shooter. We want you to focus entirely on that, because they know deep down that's going to open up the rest of his game entirely. If Egor Demin can shoot the ball the way that he did at Summer League, the rest, his passing, his ability to be able to find guys all across the floor, some of the best, one of the best passers in this entire class, that stuff is going to open wide. And it's also going to increase his ability to be able to drive to the rim, which was a little bit more limited at BYU. So I think that's one of the more exciting developments. But it's interesting because if you look at the stats that matter, yeah, his 3-point attempt rate went through the roof. It was a huge increase. His assist rate crashed because he just didn't have the ball in his hands nearly as much. And in fact, that happened for a lot of the Nets prospects. We talked before about how they had Ben Saroff, Danny Wolf, and Nolan Traore. All of them saw their assist rate drop pretty dramatically from their pre-draft statistics because all of them had the ball in their hands all of the time. This team, along with kind of the Drew Timmy show going on at the same time, had everybody kind of distributing the ball more evenly and widespread across the entire roster. So you always have to kind of understand the full context with these statistics too, because I don't think any of those guys pass the ball particularly poorly, or they're not going to be able to do it in the NBA as rookies. But the context of that team was also a little bit strange, where game to game, they were also changing who had the ball more, who had more of an on-ball role to be able to give opportunity for those different prospects.
Yeah. Shout out to the Drew Timmy show. That was a ton of fun to watch. For sure. All right, let us bring up the consensus dynasty rankings. And as I'm bringing this up, Matt, how many different rankings are included in this? And is it just dynasty analysts, or were there a couple other lists that you were able to pull from as well?
Yeah, so this was my effort to be able to collect every dynasty rookie ranking that I could find from fantasy analysts on the internet. There were 16 in total that I was able to pull together. All of these kind of occurred they were all after the draft, and I think for the most part, all either before summer league or at least before Vegas summer league. So this is going to be kind of a time capsule of where opinion was on prospects prior to summer league, and we'll be able to revisit this later as we get more data. I'm going to put together ADP because for all of the 40 plus dynasty leagues that we run at Fantasy Basketball International, we're going to be doing rookie drafts after summer league. So that will give a really good sample of how smart dynasty managers are viewing this class after that summer league sample comes in. And we'll be able to compare it to what it looked like here. But with those 16 dynasty rankings, we were able to kind of get an idea of a few different things. Number one, just the average rank. And, averages are helpful to be able to give you an idea of overall how the wisdom of the crowds views a prospect. But we also looked at what the high and the low was for each prospect, because that gives you an idea of the range, which we also put on there as well, to be able to give you an idea of like how wide of a range from ranking to ranking could these players be viewed, which is going to be helpful for your draft to be able to say, this guy has a pretty tight range. Seems like he always goes right around here. If I want this guy, I need to get into this range. Versus with other people, maybe I could wait a little bit because it looks like the range is pretty broad on this guy. Maybe I don't need to worry as much about being able to move up. And putting all of that together, I think kind of painted an interesting picture, a little bit different than the way that I view things, but I think also representative of probably how the public in general views these prospects. Once you get this many rankings together, it's kind of more consistent with ADP. And I do find rookie draft ADP, if you just take it straight off of the NBA draft, you end up getting a pretty heavily tilted toward draft order ADP that isn't that helpful. This is a little bit more thoughtful because it's analysts, it's people who already had preconceived notions of these players prior to the draft from a fantasy perspective. So I think it's a little bit more helpful for that reason. But as you can see here, you get Cooper Flagg number one. Everyone had him number one. No surprise there. Dylan Harper, almost everyone had him at number two. And that's kind of what we expected, that those two players are going to be kind of the 1 and 2 in this draft, kind of tiered from each other. Not much, no overlap at all. Flagg, obviously, your consensus number one. But obviously got a little bit more interesting after that. BJ Edgecombe, kind of your clear number three with a 3.5 average rank. And beyond that, Ace Bailey and Con Knipple kind of making that next tier, pretty close to each other. An interesting balance between them of people who had them a little bit higher and lower as well. The range on those guys much wider. Edgecombe, basically 3, 4, 5 on all rankings, but with Ace Bailey and Con Knipple as low as 11 in some rankings. So this is where it gets a little bit more divisive, a little bit less likely to be able to find consensus. So you may in your drafts, and we'll see based on summer league. I think both of them were good at times, and maybe mixed results for both of them. So I think opinion will probably be similar going forward, where they might fall to the back end of the top 10 for you in your rookie draft. So there's some ability to be able to wait it out if you really like them. You could get lucky to be able to get them at a later draft slot than you anticipated. And then Trey Johnson is kind of coming in behind both of them, ranked as high as third in some rankings, but also as low as 13th. So this is one of the widest ranges of opinion on any of the players taken in the lottery. And that's understandable because I think Trey Johnson, while he was awesome at Summer League, and it's really helpful to be able to see him score, shoot threes at the volume that he did, everything that we thought would work from coming out of Texas did. Also, the rest of his fantasy game just really wasn't there the same way that wasn't at Texas. So if you love Trey Johnson, you probably love him even more after Summer League. And if you had doubts about Trey Johnson, I think those continued in some ways, even if you can still acknowledge that he's going to be a legitimate NBA scorer, maybe in his rookie year.
Yeah, I don't remember if I was the one who had him at 13, but I know I was on the lower side of with Trey Johnson, and it's for the reason you mentioned about, well, yes, I think he can definitely shoot the ball, and I presume he will be a NBA level scorer, and I do feel pretty confident about that after watching him in Summer League, and he does have like a star feel to him. So maybe if everything pans out and he becomes the high end like elite level scorer that he can potentially become, then enough like residual stats just kind of come along with that to the point where he is a really productive 9-cap player. But there's also definitely a scenario where yes, he can score and shoot, but Because he's the focus of the defense every night. He's not super efficient from the floor, good from the free throw line, but then not really getting many assists, not really getting any defensive stats. And yeah, I think that's why it's fair to be a little lower on him in category leagues. Nobody I was really disappointed with as far as their performance, especially from this top six. I think the disappointing part was that a lot of them didn't play a ton of games. I mean, we saw 2 out of Cooper Flag. We saw Dylan Harper miss all the games prior to Vegas Summer League and then miss the first one there while dealing with a groin injury, but he looked really good. BJ Eshkom played 1 game, missed a bunch, and then played another. Ace Bailey, I think, played 2 games. Con Knipple was relatively available, and Trey Johnson just didn't play in their last one. And then Knipple struggled in that first game, but then I thought looked much better after that. So I don't know. My opinion on a lot of these guys didn't change too much based on just what we saw. But I think maybe this next group of players will be a little bit more interesting. Let me see if I can get this to be right with Egor at the top, and then Derek Queen, Malawach, Jeremiah Fears, Colin Murray Boyles, and Kasper Yakuchonis. A little bit more, I guess, interesting performances from some of these guys, because we talked about Demin already. Derek Queen had a lot of the fun stuff that we talked about pre-draft where, he's an incredible passer for a big, and that's why some people had him ranked so high, but really, really struggled defensively guarding fives. And then it's like, okay, how does he fit in here? Fears had some fun buckets, but did not really get many assists and had quite a few turnovers. And then Yakuchonis had, the abysmal start where he was like 1 for 15 in 3 games. And then he had a really good game against the Hawks in Summer League. What's kind of your overall thoughts on this group of players?
Yeah, this is where the draft really becomes in the eye of the beholder in rookie drafts right now. And I don't think that's going to change a lot coming out of Summer League, because there's kind of pluses and minuses with all of these guys in this range. With Demin, it was what we talked about earlier. The 3-point volume, the 3-point shooting as a whole was really intriguing. The role was completely different than we anticipated. I think that's going to be fine, but that might scare some people away. Like, part of the appeal for him was he's going to rack up big assists. That did not happen at all. His assist rate crashed down to 8.9% from 34.6% as an assist rate at his year at BYU. So that is by far the biggest decline. That's almost a 26% decline in assist rate, which is unbelievable. It's entirely role based. It's not that he forgot how to pass. I would bet on that coming back. And I think he's going to hold for me in rankings, because I was really encouraged by the 3-point shooting spike. The fact that he's shooting at that kind of volume suggests a level of confidence in his shooting that I think might mean that all of the rumors that we had heard about the pre-draft workouts, how good he was looking, what the Nets said about how he shot the ball in workouts with them, that carried over, and it made it a lot more believable to be able to see how he looked in Vegas. With Derek Queen, it was interesting because you had the highs of kind of him giving Yang Hansen the business in that game, and really, kind of displaying the full bag of Derek Queen. The defensive struggles were pretty obvious. That was there. I was hoping to be able to see some improvement in 3-point shooting volume, and it did not happen at all. So that really does raise the question of, like, how is this fit possibly going to work with Zion Williamson? It was strange to be able to have him out there with Yves Missy so much as he was. I don't think that's a really great fit here either, to be able to have him next to a traditional center who doesn't space the floor. It led to a lot of really awkward attempts kind of outside of the restricted area, just because the paint was so clogged at times for Queen. And it was hard to be able to feel great about that. But on the positive side, there was an improvement in the assist rate that could be sticky. The rebounding carried over from college as well. So from a fantasy perspective, I think the stat set is still there. The opportunity will be there, but the questions about fit on this New Orleans roster will continue. With Kamen Malawach, this was a really bad context for him on the Phoenix Suns. They had like Yuri Collins out there trying to run the point. They didn't really have people who could facilitate to be able to get advantage and be able to get it to a big man. And they had him playing next to Iso Okadaro a lot of the time. He was getting a lot of the rebounds, kind of doesn't space the floor, has a little bit of a push shot, but he doesn't really do anything to be able to open things up for Malawach. But the thing that we need to be able to take away, something that's sticky from this, something that matters with Kamen Malawich, is the 3-point shooting volume. After it was talked about, the way that, he shot it in workouts, and I roll my eyes when I hear that with big men, because we hear it every draft cycle, and then they don't do it in games. But he actually did it, and he shot at a pretty good volume that was drastically higher than what we saw at Duke, going from a guy who was only getting up around 1.2 3-pointers per 100 possessions So barely at all, to getting up 6.7 3-point attempts per 36 minutes during summer league so far. If that holds, if he's going to be able to come out with that kind of shooting volume, have the confidence to be able to do that and grow his efficiency in it, that could really mean that he's going to be a 3-point shooter in the league. That's something that we're going to be watching in preseason, watching as we move forward, because that could drastically change his fantasy value. So no, he didn't have a great summer league statistically, but that a lot of that stuff is just noise. The signal here is the 3-point shooting volume increase. I think that matters. And I think in a better context on a team with real players, he could look a lot different than what we saw in Vegas. With Fears, the 3-point shooting was not strong. The volume was about the same. He obviously didn't hit any of them. We saw from what we saw from Owen Phillips that we don't care about that as much. But beyond that, you were hoping to be able to see a really strong assist rate. That declined significantly. Went from a guy who was in the high 20s in assist rate down to around 16.2%. So that's where we need to be able to see it from Jeremiah Fears. We didn't. I think, like we've been talking about when we've talked about this class every single time on these podcasts, he is going to take some time. I'm not giving up on Jeremiah Fears. I'm just expecting that it's not going to be immediate with him. And Summer League kind of enforced that in some ways. With Colin Murray Boyles, I was really excited about what we saw from him, especially yesterday. I think it started to come together for him a bit more. We need to remember he's a little bit rusty at this point, hadn't played in a while, coming off of a disappointing season at South Carolina, at least from a winning perspective. We just hadn't seen much of Colin Murray Boyles. And it was great to be able to see some of the things that make him such a interesting fantasy player that we know translate from Summer League to a rookie season pop in Summer League. The assist rate was about the same as it was during his pre-draft season. The offensive rebounding was there at an even higher rate than it was during the sophomore season at South Carolina, and the block rate was also almost doubled from what it was at South Carolina. And yes, small sample size, but we know that these are things that do translate. So seeing his game, the intensity of his game translate over right away was really encouraging to be able to see that apply in a statistical perspective in Summer League. With Yakuchonis, I think that, this is a great example of why 3-point shooting percentage shouldn't matter to you in these games, because the highs were high, the lows were extremely low. I think the bigger concern was in the half court, the things from the eye test perspective, the half court was still an issue for him, where when he did get going in a game, it was because he was rushing down the court to make sure things did not slow down, that he didn't get stuck in a half court with the defender on him, applying on-ball pressure, and then things were better. If he was playing fast offense, if he was playing in transition, it worked. If he wasn't, it really didn't work. And it improved a little bit in some of the more recent games, but that's going to be the difficulty for him, along with learning how to be able to play NBA defense. I have some questions at this point with Norm Powell coming in, if he's going to be in the rotation at all in Miami. I think if you're not going to be able to defend at a high level, you're certainly not going to be able to play next to Tyler Hero. It's going to be struggle to play next to Norm Powell. I think Davion Mitchell, Norm Powell, and Tyler Hero are going to kind of make up most of that guard rotation, and Yakuchonis is going to have to kind of prove himself to Eric Spoelstra that he's going to be able to play defense at the level that the Heat need him to be able to, that he's going to be able to be an impactful player in half-court offense. And it could take a little bit of time, but I wouldn't fully hit the panic button. I think there's just going to need to be some slow progress here.
Yeah, and I think the good news with this group is that at least someone who I would say from a group of pretty smart people has each of these players top 5, except Colin Murray Boyles, and someone has them at 7. So if you want to trust the right person, be optimistic, then maybe, you feel pretty confident about some of these guys, or maybe you trust the more the pessimistic side and stay away from some of these guys. Whatever fits your personal agenda, I think that's how you should use this data. That's a fun way of putting it. But Derek Queen was, I think he hit from that first game, I think he hit a 3 at the end that made me feel a little bit better because it was an off the dribble one. And then the next game I watched him, I think he had 2 that were just maybe like all backboard or something, just like really ugly. So I think that's definitely something that's worth keeping an eye on, because it's an interesting front court there in New Orleans. We didn't get to see Cedric Howard or Thomas Sorber play, but we did get a pretty decent look at the rest of these guys from this next group, at least a couple games. I think Walter Clayton Jr. was more so just in the Salt Lake City Summer League. Maybe we got to see him one game in Vegas. I'm trying to remember what game he got hurt, but a really fun look at Carter Bryant guarding Cooper Flagg for most of the game, which was a ton of fun to watch. A lot of Ryan Kalkbrenner, a lot of Nolan Traore, the ups and downs of Noah Essengay, including a very fun meme that he was on the back end of with the poster dunk, which, my goodness, what a way to start a career. With Young Hansen, the range here is 14 to 23. I just took him at 13 in one of my leagues just because for team fit, in the sense that it's an all flex spot league and I basically have all bigs. All the other bigs were taken at that point. So I went with Young Hansen, tweeted it out, and I had some people telling me, oh no, I took him at 5, or he went at 6 in my league, or 10 in my league, or 9. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it makes me feel a little bit more rational. I don't feel quite as bad. I also saw a report this morning that apparently he had a promise from the Nets at 19, which rationalizes the pick a little bit more from Portland, because they were like, okay, like Brooklyn could trade up. Brooklyn has the assets to trade up if they find out that we're going to take him at 16. So I think knowing all of this now, okay, it makes a little bit more sense why you take him there. And then also seeing him play, it makes a little bit more sense why you take him there. At the time, I think I don't know if outrage is the best word, but we'll use outrage, was fair in the sense that basically everyone had him as a second round guy. And then now knowing two teams were like had him at least in the top 20 grid, that taking him at 16 makes a little bit more sense. He's been a ton of fun. How do you feel about this group overall?
Yeah, this is where you're going to see some helium in their rookie draft rankings and, where they're being taken in rookie drafts. With Young Hansen, I think he's clearly the biggest helium riser of the rookies, going from a pre-summer league to a post-summer league perspective. And I think some of it is justified. I think some of it we need to hit the brakes on a little bit. And let me explain. So the 3-point shooting volume, there is a real increase here. He's going to take trailer threes because he's probably going to be trailing behind everybody, slowly moving down the court, but he will take them. And we've seen that throughout all of his games so far. I think that's really interesting and a really positive development for him as a prospect and as a fantasy player. The offensive rebounding was not there at all. This is a guy who, in his year in the CBA, had a really strong 10.5% offensive rebound rate, has dropped down to 4.7%, which is terrible for a center in summer league. So there's a physical development perspective here that's going to need to change. Also, him being on the perimeter more, it's going to be more difficult if he is taking threes, going to be more difficult to be able to get as many offensive rebounds as well. But that was a significant drop and something that matters to be able to see in summer league. The assist rate jumped up significantly, going up almost 10%. That's huge. And that passes both, from a statistical perspective and the eye test. You just needed to watch that first game, see him hitting cutters from the top of the key, to know that this is something special. This is what makes him special, and what is going to give him a very long leash as a prospect to be able to develop the areas of his game that don't work yet, because he can pass. He can pass at a level that we did not see fully on display in the CBA. This is a guy who only had a 14% assist rate in the CBA, up to 23.6% so far in summer league, and everything that you see on film backs up that increase in assist percentage. And beyond that, the blocks have held up entirely. So he was a 7.1% block rate player in the CBA, exactly the same in summer league. So that big frame, that ability to be able to rim protect, that's going to be there. That's encouraging. My question is this: if he can't play NBA defense, which right now in everything that I've seen in summer league, he's not there yet. And I think it's not his fault. He doesn't know how to play NBA defense. He didn't have to play anything like this level of competition, even summer league competition defensively in the CBA. It's going to be a big, big adjustment. It's going to take multiple years, but can the offense be good enough to be able to make it worth the squeeze to get him in the lineup because the offense is so good? I think the Blazers are going to give him that opportunity. He's definitely going to be moving up for me, but I will temper expectations for people that he might not be playable defensively. Like, if you are 80% of Nikola Jokic, 75% of Nikola Jokic, if part of that decrease is the defense, then you might not be playable. Because even in Jokic's early career, before he kind of learned the tricks of the trade, before he began to process the game at even a higher level defensively that allowed him to be able to be at least a neutral defender, a little bit plus at his best, like, it was really bad. And it made it rocky at the start of Jokic's career, where Yusuf Nurkic was playing over him, where he wasn't getting the minutes that he should be. And we all saw that. but it was still difficult for him to be able to get the traction. And I think Jokic, even as a prospect very early in his career, was a much better defender than Young Han Sen. So it's going to be an adjustment. I think people are going to need to have patience. It could be multiple years before he even gets to a point where he can be a neutral defender out there, but there are great tools. And this was an awesome summer league to be able to see him as a prospect shining in the things that make him so special. I also want to shout out a few things. Carter Bryant, the block rate, that popped immediately. The on ball defense, the 3 point volume was around the same as it was at Arizona. You kind of already see what shape of player he is, but that translated right away. And that was really nice to be able to see. Noah Essengay, the 3 point shooting volume was up. Yeah, I think that's something notable for him. If he's able to do that, that gives him a much better chance of sticking as a prospect, maybe even becoming a starter if in the highest end outcomes. With Walter Clayton Jr., the 3 point shooting volume was awesome. And I think if he's going to be that kind of player and be able to facilitate at the level that we saw Florida, he very well could be the Utah Jazz's best guard this season. Getting rid of Colin Sexton, getting rid of Jordan Clarkson clears the deck. And Isaiah Collier's been playing a lot of games this summer league. He still does the things that he does well, but the things that are weaknesses are still weaknesses. There is every opportunity right now for Walter Clayton to seize a huge role in Utah this season because of his experience, because of his shooting ability, because of his ability to be able to run an offense. He is the best total package of all of those guards right now in NBA skills that you need to be able to run an offense successfully in the NBA. And I think there's a real opportunity for him to be able to seize that starting role that maybe we didn't fully appreciate when he was drafted. And beyond that, we're talking about Nolan Traore. There were some highs. I think that we saw the assist percentage decline the way that I talked about a little bit earlier, and the 3 point shooting volume also dropped off pretty significantly from his season in the French league. So some concerns, but in a limited sample. So, which is something to monitor to be able to see if that can bounce back in the preseason with him. Ryan Kalkbrenner was okay. I think he kind of did the things that I expected to be able to see from him. The offense is still kind of rudimentary. There's not a lot to it from him offensively. Defensively, the block rate, the rebounding were kind of there the way that we expect them to be. He's going to have opportunity. This wasn't like the most exciting context for him to be in. I'm excited to be able to see him in preseason, to be able to see how he fits in with LaMelo Ball and if he gets minutes alongside of the starters. But it was kind of what I expected to see from Ryan Kalkbrenner.
Yeah, as far as the context of that, as good as KJ Simpson was, we want to see Ryan Kalkbrenner alongside LaMelo Ball, and that's what makes him an appealing fantasy pick. Carter Bryant could not hit a shot to save his life, but again, that's one of the stats that we don't care that much about from Summer League. He kept shooting it. I think he did have a pretty good shooting night in their last game, but for the first few games, just could not get the ball to go in the basket. But the defense is going to get him on the floor whether or not he's hitting shots, which is pretty exciting, and it's going to be pretty scary to allow him. And Dylan Harper also, I thought, looked really, really good defensively. To have them out there, terrorizing perimeter players. And then, you finally managed to get by Carter Bryant. There's this guy named Victor Wembanyama down there. That's, it's not going to be fun for defenses for a very long time. A couple of the guys in this group looked really, really good in Summer League. This next group of Neek Clifford, Johan Berenjay, Rasheer Fleming, Jace Richardson, Danny Wolf, and Asa Newell. I think specifically, Clifford looked like a player of his age should in Summer League as an older prospect. He should come in and dominate. But he did, which was encouraging and was able to provide a lot of different stats, which was nice as well. It'd be interesting to see how he fits in with the Kings. Berenjay, the blocks were incredible. And then the high field goal percentage rebounds were pretty decent as well. But some of those blocks, especially in that first game against Eve Misi and the Pelicans, was very encouraging. And then Jace Richardson, I thought, looked very comfortable and was just a high-level player, which is, I think I was a little too low on him. And I don't remember exactly where I had him, but I think it was somewhere in the 20s. And we'll see exactly how it looks when he's playing alongside his teammates in Orlando. It's going to be obviously a different team, but he was playing against a tough Toronto Summer League defense, and he was able to get to his spots and get shots off, which I think was pretty encouraging. From a fantasy perspective, I still think that the statistical output is a little bit limited, but he is a player that I think is talented enough that can eventually play a large enough role that it doesn't matter. And just the fact that he's playing a ton and is able to get a little bit of stats here and there makes him a little bit of a better fantasy prospect.
Yeah, starting off with Nick Clifford, this was a guy that I was super high on before the draft. I was super high on last year before he withdrew from the class. And then I think I had some post traumatic stress of seeing the Kings take guys like Keegan Murray and squander draft picks, not develop them, take older guys, have it not work out. And I backed off a little bit in my pre-summer league rankings. Still had them above draft slot, but was kind of like, like, do I really trust the Kings for this to be able to work out? At the very least, in summer league, it has. Neek almost across the board is doing everything that we saw him do in his final season at Colorado State, where he just really developed into this great all-around wing who does everything from a fantasy perspective, from a real life perspective. The assist rate has been awesome, 32%. That's even off from the 26.8 that he was at last year at Colorado State. The offensive rebounding is right about, has dropped off a little bit from where it was, but still pretty strong for a guy who's a guard wing type. He's a good rebounder. He gets assists. He can shoot. And like we saw the 3-point volume still be around where it was before. That's great to be able to see for a guy who kind of that shooting was late developing in his career. It's really exciting. I just hope that the Kings clear the deck a little bit in that starting lineup, because right now it's just going to be difficult to be able to find opportunity for him and Devin Carter to be able to break into big minutes right now, but they should. And I think that's the direction that the Kings should be going with this roster. We'll just have to see what they're ultimately going to do because it's the Kings. With Beringer, obviously came out like lightning in that first game, getting a ton of blocks, and everything that we hope to translate from him and his athleticism did immediately. Like great offensive rebounding, great block rate, and he looked like the kind of player that we hoped he could maybe a couple years in his development already. I don't know if that's going to continue, but if he's that precocious of a prospect at his age, at his early development of only playing basketball for a few years, if we're already there, that could mean that the higher end outcomes of him of being the next Rudy Gobert really could be on the table, because that's kind of what happened with Rudy as well, where so he was supposed to be a raw prospect, and then it popped at a level almost immediately that told you, oh no, this is going to be something different. This isn't going to be like a 4 or 5 year project for this guy to be able to develop. He's already there because there's really special traits, and we saw some of that with Beringer, which is really exciting because we know Minnesota was willing to be able to move on from Gobert to be able to get Kevin Durant. We've seen that reporting. They're not going to be afraid to move Gobert if they can. I think they're going to try to while he's still performing at a high level. And it's going to be interesting to be able to see. Beringer could be a really interesting hold on your dynasty roster for that reason, because his opportunity may come sooner than we expect. With Rasheer Fleming, everything that I loved about Rasheer Fleming also showed up right away. The offensive rebounding wasn't quite as strong as, or no, sorry, excuse me, I'm reading that wrong. It was actually, and I thought so, because Malawach's really wasn't. It was Fleming and it was Oso Ighodaro who really were killing it on the offensive boards. That's great to be able to see. We know how much NBA teams are valuing offensive rebounding, especially in rotation players coming in with energy, getting extra possessions. Fleming showed an ability to do that even above the strong level that he did at St. Joe's last year. We saw the block rate also, still maintained to be pretty strong. Steal rate, which isn't as sticky in summer league, was strong as well. But he did all of the Rasheer Fleming things that we're looking for him to be able to be this really high end role player, especially for fantasy. And that was exciting to be able to see from him. I think it should carry into the regular season, where Nigel Hayes-Davis is probably going to get more opportunity early on, but eventually we could see some opportunity for Fleming to be able to work himself into being a player who can come off of the bench, hit threes. He attempted 8.2 3-pointers per 36 during summer league so far, which is a really great number. Being able to see that level of confidence from a guy who really only started hitting threes at a high level last season is great. So everything that I loved about him carried over. Loved the Jace Richardson's assist rate and his ability to be able to run offense. That was great to be able to see. It gives hope that maybe he can become a third guard for the Orlando Magic with time. Maybe take over for Tyus Jones during his rookie contract, maybe even by his second year. There's a lot to be able to like about what we saw from Jace. With Danny Wolf, it was interesting because his, the 3-point attempts were about the same where you would expect him to be. The offensive rebounding dropped off dramatically, which is something that we're going to need to be able to watch in preseason. The assist rate was still strong, and the blocks nearly doubled. So it was kind of all around the board on the statistical indicators that we're looking for with Wolf, but the blocks are the big one. If he's able to kind of hold his own on the interior defensively, that could change things pretty dramatically for him, both as a real life prospect and as a fantasy prospect. If he's able to be that kind of rim protector, that kind of interior presence. So that's something to be able to watch going forward, because I think there's a lot of fluidity with what the Nets could be doing in their front court going forward. There's not a lot that I think is completely part of the next good Nets team. Nick Claxton could get moved on from at some point. Day'Ron Sharp is now on a real contract, but still at a low average salary per year. There's a lot of opportunity for Danny Wolf to play alongside those guys as well, because of his ability to be able to handle and play on the perimeter. So, and not much at the power forward position there, unless you're considering Michael Porter Jr. So there's kind of a real chance for Danny Wolf to be able to work into this rotation. And I think he showed some nice things that make me think it's possible. Asa Newell at times looked really confident hitting three-pointers. The three-point attempt rate kind of dipped as Summer League went on, but that's something to be able to monitor going forward. I loved his energy. I think that there's going to be opportunity for him to be able to compete with Mo Gay, to be able to kind of come off of the bench in an energy role. We'll see how that goes as the Hawks are looking to be a little bit more competitive this year, but Newell could find a role on that team as a guy who plays with a lot of energy and can play in transition.
Yeah, I was hoping to be able to see Fleming play a little bit more. He didn't play the first couple of games, so I didn't actually get to see him in person, which was pretty disappointing because I do really like him as a player. Wolf, I remember specifically, I watched a good bit of the game against the Wizards, and he had like a nice steal that led to a transition bucket for himself. He had a nice rep that ended in a block, and I can't remember if it was Bub Carrington or one of Washington's guards that he was guarding, and I was pretty impressed by that because it was a guard that is able to create his own shot, and Danny Wolf was able to stay in front and get a block, which was impressive. Asa Newell, I wrote about this, but he was able to shoot a lot of threes in the first couple games, and he had the one game where he hit 4 of them, which was cool. And that next game I had watched, and early on he got like a catch and shoot opportunity in the corner. Pump fake, got the defender off his feet, was able to get to the rim, and I was like, okay, like not only was he able to just shoot a lot of shots, but I guess defenses were respecting it enough that you don't just let him shoot, which is a good thing for him, because if he's able to at least be the threat of a 3-point shooter, I think it helps him get on the floor. And bare minimum, he is going to be a really nice energy player, which was part of the scouting report coming out of UGA. But if he's able to also hit threes and rebound pretty well, then that's definitely going to help him get on the floor as a rookie. For the sake of time, we won't continue to talk about every single player, but are there a few more guys you definitely want to make sure we hit on? I know Liam McNeely specifically was a little bit better than he was in college, which I think was good to see.
Yeah, Liam McNeely was one of the guys that I wanted to talk about, because I didn't like the fantasy translation at all. I didn't like what I saw when I actually watched UConn last year. I didn't have a lot of excitement about him, with the reservation that I understood people said, well, he had the injury, the ankle injury, like that. That's why I didn't really look like himself. That might be true, at least from what we saw in Summer League, because the 3-point shooting volume was there. We knew that was going to happen. But this is one of the biggest offensive rebounding shifts that you see in this entire class. He went from a kind of meager, like not there at all, kind of 3.7% offensive rebound rate in his pre-draft season to 11.3%. And if you watch it, he looked bouncier. He looked far more athletic. There was a physicality to him that I don't think we always saw consistently last year. And that showed in the offensive rebound rate. And I think that's something to be able to watch, because if he was just going to kind of be a average to low end athlete in the NBA who could just kind of get up some threes, there was nothing to be excited about there. But if there's more to him, and because of injury, because of context, we just didn't get to fully see it last year, that's something that we need to monitor in preseason, because obviously there was a lot of hype around him as a high school prospect, coming off of playing on a great high school team. I think there was a belief that he was going to be something more, a lottery pick, and we kind of saw that guy in a lot of different ways. The assist rate also, jumped up 7%. That playmaking, so maybe the reps that he got at, last year at UConn are going to be able to help him develop even more as a playmaker in the NBA. I liked a lot of Liam McNeely, which I didn't expect. And I also really liked Hugo Gonzalez. I thought, and this is where the athleticism, we knew that was there. We knew he had the body of an NBA wing, that he had the athleticism of an NBA wing, but the perception was, oh, this is going to be like a, 2 years away from being 2 years away kind of Bruno Caboclo situation. He's not going to be able to do anything right away. He's going to languish on Boston's bench. That might still be true this season, but I think there's going to be some opportunity for him to be able to beat out a Jordan Walsh, to be able to compete with the Baylor Shiremen. Hugo Gonzalez during summer league, pretty much in all of the statistical areas that we care about, he was a positive. He was above his levels that he was at Real Madrid. The 3-point shooting volume, 6.8 3-point attempts per 36. You'd love to be able to see that. The offensive rebounding popped up to 8.4%. That's the more similar to what you see from a big. That's really impressive and shows his athleticism, his ability to be able to rebound, and his physicality. And then the assist rate was one of the biggest jumps for anybody, going up about 10%, from kind of an okay 8.4% to 18.1%, which is really impressive for a wing. And on top of that, the block rate was even a little bit better than it was at Madrid, where it was already strong. So, like, in all of the places where we care about statistical performance, Hugo Gonzalez answered the bell. And I'm now really curious to be able to see what it looks like for him coming into a training camp and a preseason in Boston, where he should have every opportunity to be able to be a part of this rotation, competing with the Josh Minotts of the world, Jordan Walsh's, and really get the opportunity to be able to maybe be kind of a low minute but energy wing coming off of the bench, to be able to supply some 3-point shooting offensively, and to be able to, I think because of his frame, actually get in there and defend against guys, in a limited role in his rookie season.
Yeah, Gonzalez is definitely a good one. His role is obviously very different in summer league than it was for Madrid last year. A larger role, and then obviously just having the ball in his hands a little bit more. Another guy that stood out to me. Oh, and also the interview that everyone immediately compared to Joe Mazzulla was very funny, seeing how their personalities will mesh will be pretty interesting. Noah Penda, I think, impressed me a little bit. Was able to shoot the ball a little bit better than I was probably expecting, because he was not a good shooter last season, but he hit 2 threes in their game last night and just looked very fluid. I think when I watched him during summer league, a good defender, a really big body. Cam Jones has had a pretty solid game. Chaz Lanier, I think, is going to be able to help fill the void from no Tim Hardaway Jr., no Malik Beasley. Probably not going to break the team record for threes or be in the conversation for leading the league in threes, but a nice floor spacer. Kobe Bray, obviously the comparisons to Devin Booker with just his ability to hit shots was impressive. Jamir Watkins, I know I joked about at the beginning. Him and Brooks Barnhizer, like, just because they got a bajillion steals during summer league, that doesn't mean we're going to be super, super high on them. But I did think that those performances were pretty impressive. Again, a lot of these guys looked pretty good. I thought, for the most part, I can't really think of anybody where I was just super disappointed with what they did. But yeah, really fun class. Any parting thoughts from you, Matt?
I think that this was a really good example with this rookie class of kind of what we're going to see coming out of college basketball now, because so few of, especially the guys who were drafted later, were early entrants. We had a bunch of auto eligible guys who had played 5, sometimes 6 years of college basketball, and it looked like it. It was better quality. The prospects were ready for this setting. They looked like they could fit in the G League tomorrow in a lot of cases. And it was really exciting to be able to see that level of basketball coming in. And I think it is going to show coming into this regular season that a lot of these guys are going to be able to compete in training camp. They might surprise, and we might get a lot of opportunity for some of these guys that shocks us for them as rookies because of that. So keep an eye on it, because even two-way guys, we're seeing every single year these guys are getting opportunity early on. They're making a difference early on. This is a good two-way class, I think. I think there's a lot of guys who've shown out in summer league that are going to continue to as they get into the season, that are going to be able to help some of these teams. So really pay attention. You got to know the full pool. And that's the big thing that I'm always in on. You got to know every single guy. You got to know what their game is. You got to know how they're going to be able to fit on their team, what the opportunities might be. That's what we're going to continue to be able to help you all do, because there's going to be a lot of value that's going to come out of this group. We already thought it before the draft. I think that this summer league has only confirmed it further.
Yep. And before we get going, just wanted to thank Owen Phillips one more time for his article. Be sure to check out the f5.substack.com, read that full article, read all of his work, and check out those graphics. Definitely really helpful. Matt, thank you once again for joining me. I believe that these consensus rankings are available on your Patreon. And so where can we find that? Where can we find the rest of your work? And be sure to follow him at NBA Dynasty ADP.
Yep. The dynasty, the rookie consensus rankings that we've been looking at today are all on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/NBA Dynasty ADP. And this is just one of many things that have been published in the last few weeks. I just put out trade calculators for both categories and points leagues. This will be able to help you be able to see what is a fair value trade for any players, any future picks. It is your complete guide to be able to help you figure out what trades you should be making, which ones you shouldn't be making. Obviously, my dynasty rankings, over 550 players ranked. My rookie rankings, with around 250 players and prospects ranked. All of my projections for those players for fantasy. It's all on there. And the thing that I just released yesterday was the earliest opportunity to be able to join our 40+ dynasty leagues, existing dynasty leagues at Fantasy Basketball International. If you're on my Patreon as a member, you get first shot to be able to fill out a form, say which leagues you'd like to join. When you join those leagues, you're not just handed over someone's abandoned roster that they gave up on. We're going to have a draft of all of the abandoned players and 2025 rookie picks. So you're going to have some of the stars of the game. The number one pick, Cooper Flagg, the ability to be able to draft him is going to be available in some of these drafts. This is an opportunity to be able to get into really competitive dynasty leagues. I'm giving it to the members on my Patreon first, so make sure to check that out. But it's a great time to be playing dynasty. Noah, I'm really happy that we got to be able to do this again. I'm looking forward to be able to kind of unpack this offseason even more in the upcoming weeks. There's a lot of work to do. The offseason never exists for dynasty managers. It might be quiet for everybody else, but this is where we get our work done, and I'm looking forward to doing it with you.
Yeah, no, it's been fun being able to do it so far and being able to talk through everything. So if you're interested, if you've been listening to this podcast and you're interested in joining a new dynasty league, like Matt said, you can subscribe to his Patreon, and then you can get priority access to 40 different dynasty leagues, and then also just being able to stick around a community of other people that I'm sure have other leagues to be able to find some to join. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Young Man Squad Fantasy Basketball Podcast. As I said, you can follow Matt at NBA Dynasty ADP. You can follow me at NoUrban22. But we will see you guys next time.